really good.
Wait a damn minute.
What? I only missed one shot. That does not make me sorry.
Ooh. Say ooh.
Welcome to Throne and Liberty.
Hey, you wanted this, right? You wanted the real deal? That's what this is. Wake up, you're in the middle of it. You want to run? Go ahead, no one's stopping you.
Fine. Let's finish this. Good morning, good evening, or good night, folks. I am your host, Simon Redhand, and welcome back to Gaming Redhanded. As you can see from my PvP footage, I'm not exactly a PvP god, but, you know, I did my best there. I'm not exactly the worst PvPer, but definitely not the best either. I didn't really do too much for my build there. I just used the same exact set I've been using for PvE to just go PvP. So I messed around a bit with some of the events that they showed up there, but most of my PvP footage is from Cargo Scramble. I didn't really mess around too much with the Prism vs. Clash mechanics, as I find it to be terrible. Figured I'd use this video to quickly go over my build itself, but the build is in relation to PvE. For PvP, I didn't do anything that's too special here. I use the exact same gear, the exact same setup here. If you're going to be taking PvP seriously, the set you want to be focused on is the Savior set. If you don't know what the Savior set is, let's go through it real quick. The one-piece bonus is Medicine cooldown haste, so it speeds up your cooldown recovery. Two-piece bonus is when you're above 70% health, you get increased weapon and status damage plus 10%, which is pretty strong. And your three-piece bonus and the four-piece bonus are when your HP drops below 30%, automatically use the least potent activator in the backpack. After using an activator, movement speed plus 20%, all damage plus 20%, and cloak for 2 seconds. 20% damage reduction on torso and limbs for 20 seconds. Now you'd think that the most important part of this set bonus would be that automatically use of your activators when you drop below 30%, but it's actually that cloak for 2 seconds. Because for some reason in this game, when you cloak, you don't take damage. You cannot be harmed while you're cloaked, so it's basically 2 seconds of damage immunity. It's very, very unbalanced, and it's a zero-sum game. If you don't have the Savior set and you fight someone who does have the Savior set, you're gonna lose. You cannot hope to PvP seriously without using this set. So this basically forces you to kill whatever player you're fighting twice. You would consider it to be a layer of damage mitigation, right? Anytime your life drops below a certain threshold, it will just pop an activator. You don't have to think about it, and it'll automatically heal you back. There's only 2 or 3 activators I would consider using for this, which is probably the quick activator or even the heal over time activator. And basically how you make this work is it uses your lowest activator, so you would have to consciously make sure that your backpack doesn't have any of these other weaker activators in here. You would make sure you always have anytime you leave your base, you would empty all this crap out and only keep the activators you want it to trigger, and then it would always go off. But I didn't do any of that. The only gear I'm using right now is my Lone Wolf set. I'm using 4-piece Lone Wolf, and I'm using 1-piece Shelterer's Mask because it's level 4 right now. And I'm also using a gas mask hood. Yeah, I'm sure something else would be better here, but I don't really care too much. I wanted the psi intensity over any other 1-piece bonus, because this is my highest calibration item right now. Currently doing Corrosion shotgun build, as you can see from those videos there. And I love Corrosion. I think it's my favorite gun in the game so far. I used Unstable Bomber last league. I didn't really like Unstable Bomber too much. I just like shotguns a lot more. And I also like lightning, so those two things just vibe with me. There's nothing special going on here. If you've seen any corrosion builds in the past, it's all the same stuff, right? There's not too much build creativity here. You can't even get creative if you wanted to. There's not enough options here. If you're playing corrosion, there's an argument to be made that you should be using static shock because it gives you plus 20% surge power surge damage and reduces duration. And since this gun never puts power surge on, there's no real negative to it, so it's just a flat 20% increased power surge damage, which is not bad. I do have one that's decently rolled. However, the one I'm using now, the shock rampage, increases trigger chance. It's not that crazy, but it did roll really well, where it's giving me 20% crit damage and 4.8% power surge damage. This one is better damage all around, so I've decided to stick with this one here. Next season, if I decide to play corrosion again for a third time, which I probably will not do, if there is a new gun coming out, I most likely will use one of those and make them work. But if I decide for some reason to do a third season of corrosion, then I would go through and fix this static shock mod and make something that's much better, something that's along the line. Like if I had these rolls on a static shock, I would use a static shock. This is my best roll static shock, and while I could use it, it's just I think that I just liked how this one turned out better, but they're both equally good. For the helmet, Fateful Strike, the legendary elemental damage on here and the status damage, it didn't go past blue, but it's still good. Cannot do any weak spot damage. You can still trigger weak spot damage, you just can't do any bonus damage. Then you get increased crit rate and crit damage for 30%. In the mask, I am using first electrocution because this undeniably the best item to put in this slot here. This one here is rolled decent as well. I would like to have 2 damage mods on here, but being on the Prism Burst, I don't have access to proper events, so I can't reroll this mask mod properly, right? You need access to high risk events, high risk Chiron, high risk Dig to Hell, high risk, etc, etc. However, because the events revolve around Chiron and Dig to Hell and PvP happens here, you can't really do these events. High risk is not active right now, and when they do become active, if they become active on this, you're just not gonna be able to do them consistently because of the fact that they spark PvP, and PvP is detrimental to gearing your character correctly. What else do we have here? In my gloves, I have the crit rate, and this is only because this is my best rolled mod here, my best rolled glove, right? You see here, 4 purple, 1 legendary. It's got the crit damage, elemental damage, resonance. If you're PvPing, you wouldn't use resonance mods because you don't want to have to build stacks on players. You want to burst them as fast as possible. So you would change to flat status damage, flat elemental damage, flat crit damage, stuff like that. You don't want to be building resonance stacks for PvP builds, but PvP is such a mess right now that I wouldn't build any character around PvP. If you want a functional PvP build, you'd have to go somewhere else for that. I don't think it's worth even planning around PvP. This mod here, the only thing I would change it for, if I decide to change it, would be a crit amplifier resonance mod. Like I said though, this is my best rolled mod right now. But I do have some amplifier mods here that come close, but nothing that's as good as this, right? So I would have to go through and reroll. And like I said, because I don't have proper access to Prime Wars here, I cannot craft a good one, so I'm gonna stick with this for now. Next season, when the winter season starts up, I will go out of my way to try and recraft a crit amplifier resonance mod with the stats I'm looking for here, and I would do it on just so I have the extra 50% crit damage. For my boots, covered advance. I mean, I swap back and forth between covered advance and Ruthless Reaper. I like Ruthless Reaper for when I'm doing dungeons and I don't need the damage because I don't like reloading that often. So Ruthless Reaper makes it so I can go clear an entire dungeon without having to reload. Now there's certain builds that you want to reload for. Like right now I'm using Lone Wolf. Before I was using Shelterer, so I didn't want to reload. But because I'm using Lone Wolf now, you do want to balance reloading because in my boots, in my pants, I'm also using Deadshot. Deadshot, every time you crit, it increases your crit damage by 5%, but the effect is removed on reload. So you want to have a decent sized magazine for this, as well as you don't want to reload too often, right? So not needing to reload is pretty good for this one here. But if you notice here, the Lone Wolf set is every time you reload, you get increased crit rate by 8% for 2 seconds after reloading. Now you can completely ignore this bonus here altogether, right? And just build off the fact that you're building stacks. A lot of people gravitate to Lone Wolf, but because I don't like having to rely on reloading too much, I did like the Shelterer set a bit better. But the Lone Wolf is more universal, right? So when the next season starts up, if it is another crit build, the Lone Wolf has put me in a better position to get started. But I have both sets, right? I have Shelterer and Lone Wolf, so that's fine. Right now my magazine size is only 19, so Deadshot itself is fine. You do need about 9 crits for it to max out, which is fine. But like I said, in PvP, you don't want that kind of ramp up. If I were to switch this out, there are other mods that you would put there instead. I tried to make this one work for a bit, but it's just, I don't empty the magazine fast enough for this one to stack up to 3 times. So it was always hover around 2 stacks, right? So I didn't find it to be that useful. Reload Rampage is the one I always kind of like try to consider, but there's not enough ads, right? There's certain boss fights do have ads, but there's not enough to really make use of this. And the fact that I mean, it is cool that it lasts until the next reload, right? So you can make use of it in most fights. Its uptime is longer than you would expect. However, this is a mod that's cool, but it's not there yet. If this stacked up to 3 times, this would be probably one of the strongest mods to use. Even if it's stacked once, it'd probably be one of the strongest mods to use, right? Because it doesn't have a cooldown timer on it. You kill target, refills 2 bullets from the magazine, and then you basically get 10% increased damage until next reload. It's a very strong mod, especially when using Corrosion or Unstable Bomber, because of the fact that you are building off both your weapon damage and your status damage. And this mod would probably be more reliable than Deadshot in terms of consistent damage upgrades. It's just the needing to have another target there is something I don't like relying on. I don't like relying on having to kill ads in order to get damage bonuses, right? For the jacket, I've been messing around with a bunch of stuff here. In that PvP video there, you'll notice that everyone's using Unstable Bomber. Well, a lot of people are using Unstable Bomber. There's no counterplay to heavy explosives, which is the mod that everyone's using right now. It has your character staggered and dancing around, and every time you get shot, you're basically stun locked until you die. There's no counterplay to this. It's one of the worst designed mods in this game here, and because people are playing Unstable Bomber and using this, I was trying to find other ways to deal with it. So I started messing with trying to figure out, well, does this mod trigger and activate the deviate state? Does this consider that stagger to be a deviated state? It doesn't. So there's no real counterplay to it. Your only counterplay to someone using that is hoping they miss you, or it doesn't trigger, or you kill them first. But other than that, if they start shooting you, they get you in a loop where they basically stun lock you, and then that's it. You're just dead. There's nothing you can do about it. I like using rejuvenating talents. It lets you self-sustain while you're doing dungeons and stuff like that. I know a lot of people like using the blue mods, the generic blue mods instead of, because these defensive mods aren't worth it in terms of like, people feel like you don't need to be more defensive in dungeons and whatnot. But I like it. I'm able to solo promo dungeons and stuff like that, so I feel like it's fine. I don't like dying too much. Like the video where Frank here gets it. I'm just kidding. I never heard Frank. Do you see Frank? His white coat is majestic. We can get the trade number real quick. Let's unload. About 40k DPS, right? I could go through and like really properly do this, which is shoot once, reload, so I could trigger that last lone wolf set bonus. So about 50k DPS if I do go to my way to manipulate the lone wolf. If I were to put my buffs on, I only use 2 buffs, which is probably red and whimsical drink. My whimsical drink is being made with coneflower, so it gives me the ability to deal with my sanity issues. I think that's about it. I mean, there's nothing here. Like the builds in this game are not that in depth. I don't feel the need to go through and give you all this math and all this. It's like it doesn't matter. Really, it really doesn't. I said in my mod video before that I focus on doing 2 damage stats when I roll mods. So this mod here would be considered perfect mod for me. You could make an argument that you should go for violent crit damage, right, which is a violence mod. It's because crit damage does scale a bit higher, so you get crit damage and weapon damage. This mod here, being power surge oriented, is pretty good. I would like to have 2 damage mods down here, but like I said, this is a mod that is good for now, but I would definitely reroll it because it only has 1 damage mod on there. This mod here is another one where very close to being perfectly rolled. The resonance mods themselves were legendary. This mod would be done. It's almost there. I wish that at least one of them got legendary, but you know, it's fine. This mod here is probably one of the best mods I've rolled in a long time here. Both the damage mods are legendary, and it still has the perfect rate 1 damage, so it's pretty good for killing bosses. But it's good generally as a mod just because it has both the generic stats, legendary already, and then this resonance mod is basically what I would want most of my mods to look like, right? Both the resonance mods are legendary. I think that's about it. Second doesn't matter. Don't pay attention to any stuff. I don't do weapon swap shit. I don't pretend for a second that this is a good combination. You know, go here and heavy attacks like this is. I don't pretend that this is good. People like to do these things where they go, oh, you know, you start a heavy attack and then you wait for it to go off. But as you can see here, it rarely goes off on time. It's not reliable. Even if you cancel, it's not reliable. I know people like to do these guys where they'll slam the ground first and put down the Focus Warfare and then act like you'll do that in a real fight, and you're just not. Like right now, I've just done it 3 times and it has not gone off once. And that's even without weapon canceling it. I'm not animation canceling it. It's just not going off. There it goes. What's the reason why that didn't go off? Who knows? But there's no way I'm going to pretend that that's a viable combination for damage. It's not. Secondary, I've been messing with some stuff. I like this shotgun. I kind of wish it was a legendary version of this shotgun. I love the 870. The reason why I like the Sandstorm is because it activates Fortress Warfare just by switching to it. And this one is a bit more reliable to use. But there are times where when you're in a dungeon and the lag takes over and you can't switch, or you end up in a switching loop where you just... So relying on weapon swaps is hard to do. But what I like about the Sandstorm is you can just roll the mouse wheel, right? And you don't have to think, you don't have to worry about it too much. You roll the mouse wheel and it will pull it off, and you just go back. So I like that setup, right? You can use Mark II, but I use my drone, these drones here. The new ones they've added in here, and these drones marked, right? I also have access to the firepower drone, which repairs stuff like that the way I set it up. So this drone here is an exploration drone. The focus module, basically it automatically marks a random enemy within 20 meters. So you can use that for your marks, or these here. So the improved scout drones, I would go out of my way to buy these, but Prison Verse is not a real season to me, so I didn't bother. And like right now I'm not really playing. I finished my territory purification and I'm not actually doing anything else right now. Probably will log off right after I finish this video. When I am playing seriously, I do use the improved scout drone because I like the fact that it does give bullseye, right? So this drone you put on, you summon them up and it will mark targets for you while you're running around. So this is a fantastic drone to use, and that way you don't have to make use of switching to a weapon with bullseye on it. If you're in a Prison Verse season, you can just use the exploration drone. I do plan on making a video on these drones later on to talk about what they can do, because these drones here are actually pretty fascinating. I really do like using them. I hope these go core in terms of like they show up in the winter season. I don't like that they're tied to Rosetta the same way I don't like the way the other one's tied to Mayfly. Hopefully these things stay. I would make some tweaks to them, as in I don't want them to be memetics, because then they end up taking up your memetic slots, and there's too much of them right now. Like right now your memetic slots are jammed up with these drone modules and drone shit and all that stuff there, and I would rather these things, you drop the drone and then these modules drop in the world somewhere, or you find the recipe in the world somewhere. But I don't think they should all be memetics. I think that memetics should be reserved for cooler things, and there's too many things there's too many modules right now for memetics. That's a different video. As to the bullets I'm using right now, because we have a little struggle with Stardust source, I am using the purple ammo, but I don't have a crazy amount like I did last season. But you know, I still have a decent amount. What I got coming up next is I'm gonna do a video checking out these drones here. I'm gonna talk about these drones, discuss the different types, why you should be using them, and I think that's gonna be it until the dev video, when they talk about the actual in-depth patch notes of the winter season, right? No more previews. I expect that this week we should be seeing an actual proper video on what's going on with the winter season, right? Anyway, guys, that's gonna be it for now. I hope you guys really appreciated the PvP God at the beginning of the video there. I had a lot of fun editing that video together. Once again, I want to thank you guys for getting me to 600 subscribers, getting me to be a YouTube partner, all that good stuff. Put up a couple posts talking about what games you guys are looking into. I am most likely to be checking out Throne of Liberty this week just to see what's going on with that. I don't know if I'm making any videos for it. This could be me checking it out and playing it. The next game on my list I will be taking very seriously, however, is the Path of Exile 2 Early Access. I definitely will be doing a lot of videos on Path of Exile 2. That's one of my favorite games. I've been playing Path of Exile for close to a decade now. As always, I appreciate you guys for dropping by and giving me your time. Like the video, leave a comment down below, share it with your friends. Have yourselves a good morning. And if it's the only video you're watching me today, a good afternoon or a good night.